Chapter 1798. Zhang Yi was not in a hurry. According to the coordinates, it would only take him 2 minutes to reach the target location, so he first asked everyone to pack up their equipment and make sure they were in the best condition before setting off. Boss. My stomach hurts. A little. Fatty Sue covered his stomach with a distorted expression. There is a bathroom in the shadow space. We can take care of it on the way. Zhang Yi waved at him. Seeing that everyone looked at him strangely, Fatty Sue blushed and explained, I'm just a little nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. Zhang Yi said lightly, although it sounds like that Gue is terrible. Our primary goal is to save people. But dash. He raised an excited smile at the corner of his mouth. If there's a chance, of course we have to maximize the benefits. Zhang Yi slowly sorted out all the weapons by himself. Including the entire Fremon's arsenal he robbed, he has also equipped it. As long as he needs it, he can pour out high-intensity firepower that can flood the entire city at any time. Afterwards, everyone entered Mu Yan's shadow space, and Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door and headed towards the city of Ordo. But there was one thing that Zhang Yi noticed a little bit, and Yang Xinxin also noticed it, but neither of them said anything. Because it is difficult to guarantee that it is not a coincidence. A few hundred kilometers away from Ordo City, Bharata's troops had just finished a battle. The scale of the mechanical army here is not as large as the previous one. Bharata's troops fought relatively smoothly this time, and there were no large casualties due to insufficient preparation like the first time. The reinforcement alien, Azura, came down and began to cooperate with Emperor Shirtian to quickly deal with the super-large mechanical life forms. Then they cleared out the large number of mass-produced machines. Their alien troops did not have an advantage in numbers, and they no longer blindly launched a charge. Instead, they used guerrilla warfare to consume. These mechanical legions were not flexible enough to move, and even the mechanical life forms of the tank type did not exist. Those with tracks were all large transport vehicles. As long as you master their movement patterns, it will be much easier to deal with them. Emperor Shirtian walked out from the inside of the super-large mechanical life form, with a huge energy core rolling under his feet. At this time, the communication from Bodaka came. Emperor Shirtian answered the call, but he was still a little wary. He still suspected that the disappearance of the energy core was done by the Fremons. But after receiving the news, he knew that Bodaka was asking them to go to Alto City for support. Bodaka was not at ease with Zhang Yi. He had no idea how strong Zhang Yi was. In order to ensure that everything was foolproof, he asked the Bharata alien troops to go there for support. Emperor Shirtian heard this and smiled calmly. Since it is your request, Bodaka, I can't refuse it. We will go there immediately. Now all countries are competing for missions, and they all regard the mechanical civilization as a huge piece of fat meat, wanting to obtain more mechanical materials. At the moment, they have defeated a mechanical army without much effort, so of course they are willing to harvest more resources. So Emperor Shirtian left a few aliens and asked them to count the spoils here and go back to hand over to the Fremon's engineering troops. Then he called everyone to go to Alto City. Alto City. The battle is over. All the Fremon's aliens who came with Jusberg died in the battle. The mechanical army had no interest in their bodies, but moved them together with the construction waste on the ground to the surrounding areas of Ordo City. In their eyes, these were also garbage. In a ruin less than 10 kilometers away from the battlefield, behind a huge collapsed high-rise building, Jusberg leaned against the wall with a face full of horror, gasping for breath. Everything that had just happened made him fall into endless despair. When he was full of pride and ready to take out the core of the super-large mechanical life form, Gue from the 10 demons appeared in front of him. The two people fought with only one move, and his proud adamantium alloy battle blade was directly cut off by the black weird scimitar in Gue's hand. The powerful force made his arm numb. The tiger's mouth was cracked. Just one move made him realize the huge gap between the two. He knew that he could not beat his opponent, but at this time, his men could not give him any help, and were even waiting for him to help him out after defeating the enemy. The instinct of survival made Jusberg make a decision in an instant: escape. A black chariot-level enhanced alien who avoids war and chooses to escape is indeed extremely difficult to be killed, because the speed he bursts out in an instant can be faster than the fastest fighter in the world. In order to save his life, Jusberg fled shamefully. But what was left for those Krufa soldiers on the battlefield was the end of death. Jusberg's heart was pounding, and the only thing he could be thankful for was that he was still alive. However, this thought only emerged for a moment, and a crisis of death instantly enveloped him completely. A dazzling light lit up behind him, covering everything around him. The collapsed high-rise behind him was blown to pieces in an instant. Jusberg's pupils shrank suddenly, and a silver crescent moon rose on his forehead. His figure quickly dodged this terrifying blow like a moon shadow. When he stood firm on the ground in the distance, he saw where he was just now. Gue was standing there, looking at him with a cold and emotionless look. These creatures on the surface are very strange. Why do they always want to block our projects? And such a powerful individual can be born from such a weak group? If we leave it alone, it will probably continue to interfere with the construction. Forget it. Let's kill it. Gue murmured in a low voice. His voice was extremely dull, as if it came from a metal can. Jusberg knew that his position was exposed at this time. He turned around without hesitation and ran for his life in the ice and snow. As long as I am fast enough, he can't catch up with me. I want to escape back and inform the people in the Temple of the Gods about the situation here. They must have found something important in Alta City. Jusberg swept across the snowfield like a storm. His traces, and even the route he would take, were clearly visible in Gue's eyes. Looking at Jusberg, who had run a long distance, Gue's eyes suddenly emitted a strange red light, which became brighter and brighter, like two burning stoves. Finally, two red rays of light shot out from his eyes, and instantly penetrated the space between him and Jusberg. The air was silent for less than 0.1 seconds, and then a terrible explosion occurred where the red light landed. The earth was shaken like shredded paper, and the soil, rocks, and ice were like broken pieces of paper. A huge pit was blasted out of the vast land. Jusberg's speed was indeed very fast, but he could not avoid the full range covered by this attack. He was thrown out fiercely and rolled on the ground for thousands of times with great effort before he stopped when he hit the ruins of a building. It's still a weak creature. Gue said so. When Jusberg looked up, he was surprised to find that he had caught up with him. Your speed can catch up with me? His eyes could not hide his surprise. The physical strength of the reinforcement system is the strongest, and the speed is second only to the space system. But the Gue in front of him is comparable to his speed. However, judging from the opponent's attack method, it is clearly a release system. It is almost impossible for a person to sit on two chairs far apart at the same time. If there is really such a person, it must be an extremely rare gifted person. It's a bit difficult to kill, and the physical strength is very high. Gue made such a judgment in words that humans cannot understand. Then, the huge scorpion tail-like blade behind him slowly raised up, and the next moment, the joint of the tail blade extended and stabbed Jusberg's head fiercely. Jusberg always thought that he was very fast, but this attack was faster than him. Puff! The spike pierced into the flesh and blood splashed. Jusberg's body deviated from the vital point at the critical moment, but his shoulder was still stabbed by the scorpion tail. The barbs on the tail pierced deeply into his flesh and blood, and even into his bones. Before Jusberg could struggle, Gue lifted his body up with a little force and shook it in the air like playing with a toy. Sure enough, the flesh and blood body is so fragile. Jusberg was tossed around in the air. He gritted his teeth, roared, and grabbed the tail with sharp barbs with both hands, and then pulled the tail out of his shoulder with a hard force. But half of his arm was torn off. Large pieces of flesh and blood even hung on the tail with bones, and Jusberg's body fell heavily to the ground. When he realized that he couldn't escape, Jusberg rushed towards Gue with red eyes and roared. Forget it. I've had enough of the game. Gue raised the strange black curved blade in his hand. It looked a bit like a scorpion's pincers, and the tip was curved upward. But as he lifted the blade, The red crystal deeply embedded in the blade suddenly emerged with a thick and strange light like blood. Jusberg's body began to blur on the way of charging, and 2, 4, 8, until hundreds of phantoms appeared. But the illusion of the moon, in Gui's eyes, was like a child's trick. He just looked at it for a few times and confirmed the location of the other party's body. So he raised the battle blade in his hand and swept it forward like a fly. The red crystal burst out with huge energy, surging like a tide and gathering on the blade. The next moment, violent energy gushed out. What emerged from the blade was not a sharp blade light, but a red wave like a raging fire. In just a moment, it was released from the blade and turned into a red tsunami that swept the entire land. Unable to avoid, Jusberg's face showed a look of despair. He knew that he was going to die here today. But he was unwilling to let out an angry roar, even before his death, and charged forward. However, at this moment, the expected pain did not come. In front of him, the surging power, like a raging sea of fire, actually split away from him, as if blocked by a powerful invisible force. A voice sounded in his ears. "Finally, I'm not late. It's great that you're still alive." Jusberg turned his head suddenly and saw an Asian face appear in front of him. A glimmer of light appeared in his eyes, which had been completely desperate. He recognized this face. It belonged to the top alien Chaos of Huashu country. But then, he said to Zhang Yi, "Take me away from here. That guy is too strong. We are not his opponent at all." Zhang Yi's Sinluo Wanxiang isolated the huge space around him from the real world, and the terrifying red torrent could not break it. Zhang Yi looked into the distance, and outside the red torrent, a huge demon god figure loomed. "Since you're here, how can you know if you don't fight?" Zhang Yi lied. He didn't just arrive, but had been here for a while. After confirming that Jusberg was still alive, he patiently observed the strength of the demon god Gui. And now, he has a preliminary judgment on the power of Gui. Both close combat and long-range attacks are very powerful, and the strength is at the bishop level. But you can fight. At this time, Zhang Yi's ability of time and space has been improved to a terrifying level. Ordinary aliens of the release system or the strengthening system will have a great discount in their own combat power when facing him. Because aliens without special abilities cannot break through his dimensional door at all. Are you crazy? That guy is hard to defeat, not to mention that there is a whole army of mechanical life forms around him. Jusberg looked at Zhang Yi as if he was looking at a madman. The arc of Zhang Yi's mouth corners raised even more. "Just watch the show obediently." He opened the dimensional door and threw Jusberg several kilometers away. Jusberg was seriously injured at this time and could not give him any help. Then, the Fueying troops and Liangyu, Deng Shintong, Huahua, and others all appeared from the shadow space. "Those mechanical life forms are left to you. I'll meet this guy for a while. Don't fight to the death. If I don't fight well, we will leave immediately." Zhang Yi issued combat orders to everyone. His eyes were fixed on Gui, without moving away for a moment. When Gui saw the sudden appearance of human reinforcements, a trace of surprise finally appeared in his calm eyes. "I didn't feel their appearance at all, so is it the ability of space attribute?" He looked down at everything from a high place and was still indifferent to Zhang Yi and others. Just like humans looking down at a nest of ants, it is an innate superiority.